I wandered alone through the misty canals of Venice, a city steeped in secrets and whispers. The air was thick with the scent of damp stone and salt water, and the only sound was the gentle lapping of water against the sides of the boats. I had come here seeking adventure, lured by tales of a hidden club called La Notte di Velluto. Locals spoke of it as a place where pleasure and horror intertwined, where the line between the living and the damned blurred. Intrigued and a little apprehensive, I followed the winding canals until I came to a small, unassuming door tucked between two dilapidated buildings. A single, flickering lantern hung above it, casting an eerie glow on the surroundings. I hesitated for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest, but curiosity got the better of me. I pushed open the door and stepped inside. The club was dark and smoky, the air thick with the scent of burning herbs. The only light came from a few dim red lanterns that hung from the ceiling, casting grotesque shadows on the walls. The room was sparsely furnished, with a few mismatched chairs and tables scattered around. In the corner, under a flickering red light, I saw her. She was seated at a small table, her back to me. She was dressed in a flowing black gown that clung to her like shadows, revealing a hint of pale skin beneath. Her long, raven hair cascaded over her shoulders, framing a face that was both beautiful and terrifying. Her eyes were a deep shade of crimson, and they seemed to glow in the dim light. I felt a strange pull towards her, like a moth to a flame. I moved closer, my eyes locked with hers. She smiled, and her lips parted slightly, revealing sharp, white teeth. "Do you crave the unknown?" she breathed, her voice a seductive whisper. I nodded, hypnotized by her voice. "Then come closer," she said. "Let me show you the true nature of pleasure." I moved closer, my heart pounding in my chest. She reached out and took my hand, her touch cold and electric. She led me to a small, marble altar that stood in the center of the room. She pushed me gently against the altar, her body pressing against mine. Her kisses were sharp, her teeth grazing my skin, leaving tiny trails of blood. The pain was intoxicating, each bite pulled me deeper into her spell. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, mingling with her breathless whispers, as the boundaries between ecstasy and terror blurred in the velvet night of Venice. And in those moments I realized I'd never leave this place, not truly, not alive. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding in my chest. The dream had been so vivid, so real. I could still feel her touch on my skin, her sharp teeth against my neck. I knew that it had been more than just a dream. I had been to La Notte di Velluto, and I had met Celine. I got out of bed and went to the window. The sun was just rising, casting a warm glow over the city. I looked out at the canals, the boats, the people. Everything seemed so ordinary, so mundane. But I knew that there was a darker side to Venice, a hidden world of pleasure and horror. I knew that I had to go back to La Notte di Velluto. I had to see Celine again. I got dressed and left my apartment. I walked through the narrow streets, past the shops and restaurants, until I came to the small, unassuming door. I took a deep breath and pushed it open. The club was empty, save for a few stragglers who were just leaving. The air was still thick with the scent of burning herbs, and the only light came from a few dim red lanterns. I walked over to the bar and ordered a drink. As I waited for my drink, I glanced around the room. My eyes were drawn to a painting that hung behind the bar. It was a portrait of a woman, her long, raven hair cascading over her shoulders, her crimson eyes glowing in the darkness. I knew that it was a portrait of Celine. I finished my drink and left the club. As I walked out into the night, I could feel her eyes on me. I knew that she was watching me, waiting for me to return. I walked through the streets, my mind racing. I knew that I was in danger, but I couldn't stay away from Celine. She had a hold on me, a hold that I couldn't break. I walked back to my apartment, but I didn't go inside. I stood outside the door, my hand on the handle. I could hear her voice in my head, whispering to me, tempting me. "Come back to me," she whispered. "Let me show you the true nature of pleasure." I took a deep breath and opened the door. The apartment was dark and empty. I could hear the sound of my own breathing, my heartbeat. I walked over to the window and looked out at the city. The sun was just setting, casting a warm glow over the rooftops. I knew that I couldn't stay in Venice. I had to get away from Celine. I had to forget about her. I turned away from the window and walked out of the apartment. I walked through the streets, my footsteps echoing in the emptiness. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew that I had to get away. I walked for hours, until I came to the edge of the city. I looked out at the lagoon, the water shimmering in the moonlight. I took a deep breath and stepped into the water. The water was cold and refreshing. I floated on my back, looking up at the stars. I could hear the sound of my own breathing, my heartbeat. I felt at peace. I closed my eyes and let the water wash over me. I let go of all my worries, all my fears. I let go of Celine. I drifted off to sleep, the sound of the water lulling me to sleep. When I woke up, the sun was shining and the birds were singing. I opened my eyes and looked around. I was lying on the beach, the water lapping at my feet. I got up and brushed the sand off my clothes. I looked out at the water, the sun sparkling on the waves. I felt a sense of peace and tranquility that I had never felt before. I knew that I had made the right decision. I had escaped from Celine, and I was free. I turned and walked away from the beach, towards the city. I knew that I would never forget Celine, but I also knew that I would never see her again. I walked through the streets, my heart light. I looked around at the people, the shops, the restaurants. Everything seemed so ordinary, so mundane. But I knew that there was a darker side to Venice, a hidden world of pleasure and horror. I knew that I had been lucky to escape. But I also knew that there were others who were not so lucky. Others who had fallen under Celine's spell, and who would never be able to escape. I walked on, my footsteps echoing in the emptiness. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew that I was heading home. I had the unsettling experience of a night I'll never forget. The city's lights were a stark contrast to the darkness I stumbled into. It all began when I met Samantha, an enigmatic woman with an allure I couldn't resist. Our affair was intense and passionate, but it was the night we ventured to the abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city that would haunt me forever. The warehouse, once bustling with activity, now stood in eerie silence. The cold air inside seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. As we explored the dimly lit corridors, Samantha's desire seemed to grow, her touch igniting a mix of pleasure and dread. The warehouse, with its decaying walls and shadowy corners, felt like a living entity. Suddenly, the air thickened with an oppressive darkness, and I began to hear whispers and faint, unsettling sounds. Samantha's eyes glowed with an intensity that seemed both seductive and terrifying. It was clear she was no ordinary woman. Her presence was a magnet for malevolent forces. The room seemed to close in around us, and an unexplainable dread enveloped me. As our passion reached its peak, I felt a cold, spectral presence brush against me. The sensations were both thrilling and horrifying. The line between ecstasy and terror blurred, leaving me in a state of confusion and fear. By morning, Samantha had vanished without a trace, and I was left alone with the echoes of our night, haunted by the sinister whispers of the warehouse. Samantha was a woman of mystery and intrigue. I met her at a bar, and she immediately captivated me with her enigmatic aura. She was beautiful, with long, flowing hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through me. We talked for hours, and I found myself drawn to her in a way I had never experienced before. Our affair was intense and passionate. We spent every spare moment together, exploring the hidden corners of the city and indulging in our desires. But there was always an undercurrent of darkness to our relationship. Samantha was unpredictable, and I often felt like I was playing with fire. One night, she suggested we go to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. I hesitated at first, but she was persistent, and I eventually agreed. The warehouse was a massive, decaying structure, its windows boarded up and its walls covered in graffiti. It was an eerie place, and I felt a sense of unease as we approached. We entered the warehouse, and the heavy door slammed shut behind us. The air was cold and damp, and the only light came from a few flickering bulbs. We made our way through the labyrinthine corridors, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Suddenly, Samantha stopped. She turned to me, her eyes glowing with an unnatural intensity. "Do you feel it?" she whispered. "The presence?" I nodded slowly. I could feel the oppressive darkness closing in around us. It was a palpable force, and it made my skin crawl. Samantha smiled, and she reached out to touch me. Her touch was cold and electric, and it sent shivers down my spine. She pulled me close, and I could feel her breath on my neck. "Let's play," she whispered. "Let's explore the darkness together." And with that, she led me into the depths of the warehouse. We wandered through the shadowy corridors, our hands intertwined. The darkness seemed to envelop us, and I felt like I was losing my sense of reality. Samantha's grip on me tightened, and I could feel her nails digging into my skin. I can't breathe," I gasped. Samantha laughed softly. "That's just the darkness talking," she said. "It's trying to scare you. But you don't have to be afraid. I'm here with you." She pulled me closer, and I could feel her lips against mine. Her kiss was like a drug, and it made me forget all my fears. I surrendered to the moment, and we lost ourselves in each other's passion. As our passion reached its peak, I felt a cold hand brush against my shoulder. I gasped and turned around, but there was no one there. "What was that?" I asked. Samantha smiled. "Just the darkness," she said. "It's playing with us." I tried to ignore the feeling of unease, but it was no use. The darkness was all around us, and it was growing stronger. Suddenly, I heard a faint whisper. It was coming from the shadows. "Help me," the whisper said. "Please help me." I looked at Samantha, but she just smiled. "It's just the darkness," she said. "Don't listen to it." But I couldn't ignore the plea. I turned and ran towards the sound. I ran through the corridors, the darkness closing in around me. I could hear the whispers getting louder, and I felt a cold hand reach out to grab me. I screamed and dodged the hand. I kept running, but the darkness was relentless. It was suffocating me, and I felt like I was going to faint. Just when I thought I couldn't go on any longer, I saw a light in the distance. I ran towards it, and I burst into a large, open room. The room was empty, but there was a single window on the far wall. I ran to the window and looked out. I was high up, and I could see the city spread out below me. The lights of the city twinkled like stars, and I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I turned away from the window and looked around the room. There was a single door on the far wall, and I walked towards it. I opened the door and stepped inside. The room was dark, but I could make out the shape of a bed in the center of the room. I walked towards the bed and sat down. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I could still hear the whispers, but they were faint now. I felt the darkness closing in around me, but I was no longer afraid. I opened my eyes and looked around the room. The darkness was still there, but it was no longer oppressive. It was just a part of the night. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked out at the city below me, and I smiled. I had faced the darkness, and I had survived. Driving down Highway 66 toward Denver, the sunset blazes in my eyes, and the Rockies are veiled in mist, a stunning evening. I'm cruising well below the speed limit after my last 2 speeding tickets drained my wallet. I feel like an old lady, offensive to me and old ladies alike, but that's how it feels. Cars zoom past in the fast lane, SUVs and sporty compacts, while I plod along, alone, until I notice a vehicle tailing me. It's a sleek, black convertible, and the driver is captivating, blonde, high cheekbones, with a sultry presence that suggests she's in her prime. She's applying scarlet lipstick with her hands, which has me curious about how she's controlling the car. Her gaze meets mine, and she provocatively gestures with her finger, sliding it suggestively down her neck. I glance away, realizing I'm approaching a large truck and slam on the brakes. She manages to avoid a collision, but I see her adjusting her top and then, in a daring move, she flashes her breasts before speeding off. Unable to resist, I follow, the adrenaline pumping through my veins. The sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, casting a dramatic spotlight on her sleek, black form. The air grows cooler, and the scent of pine fills my senses as we drive deeper into the mountains. The highway twists and turns, leading us into a world of deep canyons and towering pines. I'm caught in a strange conflict. I'm trying to be responsible, to drive safely, but the allure of this mysterious woman is too strong. She slows down, beckoning me forward. I pull up beside her, my heart pounding in my chest, and she smiles, a dazzling, teeth-baring grin that sends a shiver down my spine. "You're a slowpoke," she quips, her voice husky and smooth. She leans closer, her perfume a mix of musk and jasmine, intoxicating. "I'm trying to be safe," I stammer, feeling like a teenager again, clumsy and awkward. She chuckles, a low, rumbling sound that vibrates through the car. "Safety is overrated," she says, her eyes glimmering with mischief. "Especially when there are better things to do." Something about her, maybe her bold confidence, or the way she commands her car, makes me want to follow her. I park on a side road, watching her pull into a clearing, a small bonfire crackling in front of a tent. "Are you joining me?" she asks, her voice a whisper, despite the distance. I hesitate, my mind battling with my cautious nature. This woman, with her reckless disregard for safety and her captivating aura, is like a siren calling me to my doom. I don't know," I manage to say, my voice barely a whisper. "Come on," she says, her hand outstretched, a gesture both inviting and demanding. "Leave your boring life behind for one night. This is an adventure." Her eyes, the green of a forest after a storm, hold me captive. I feel a pull towards her, a yearning for something I can't quite define. I step out of my car, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. We sit by the fire, and she's a mesmerizing sight, her blonde hair catching the light of the flames, her skin a pale, alabaster canvas. She pours me a drink from a flask, a fiery liquid that burns my throat. "What's in this?" I ask, feeling a warmth spread through my body, a sensation both pleasant and disconcerting. "Don't worry about it," she says, her lips curving into a wicked smile. "Just enjoy it." As the night deepens, her stories weave a spell around me. Tales of forbidden places, forgotten rituals, and dark secrets whispered in the shadows. I'm enthralled, captivated by her words and her presence, forgetting my apprehension, my need for safety. The fire dies down, the embers glowing like dying stars. Her fingers intertwine with mine, a spark of electricity jolting through me. The air is thick with something primal, something seductive and dangerous. She leans closer, her breath warm on my skin. "Don't be afraid," she whispers, her voice a husky temptress. "Let go." I close my eyes, surrendering to her touch, her intoxicating scent, the pull of her mysterious aura. The night, once an unsettling darkness, transforms into a tapestry of desire, a symphony of sensations that intoxicate and bewilder. The night is a blur of whispered secrets, stolen kisses, and a raw, primal energy that consumes me. I can't remember the details, only the feeling, an explosive mix of ecstasy and terror, a dizzying spiral of pleasure and pain. As dawn approaches, the sky begins to blush in the east. I wake with a gasp, disoriented and confused. The fire has died down, the only remnant of the night's activities, the ashes scattered around the clearing. She's gone, her tent empty. I look around, feeling a sudden rush of panic. I'm alone, lost in this deserted landscape, my mind a chaotic mix of exhilarating memories and unnerving questions. I stumble to my car, the engine sputtering to life. I drive away, a mixture of fear and exhilaration coursing through my veins. The sun rises, bathing the landscape in a golden light, a stark contrast to the darkness of the night. I'm left with a haunting emptiness, a longing for the woman who vanished into the morning mist. The experience, both terrifying and intoxicating, has left a permanent mark on my soul. Days later, I find myself driving down I-70, heading towards Denver again. The landscape is the same, vast, empty, and eerily beautiful. A shiver runs down my spine as I remember the night in the mountains, the woman who haunted my dreams. I pull over at a gas station, needing a coffee and a respite from the endless asphalt. As I walk inside, I catch a glimpse of myself in the reflection of the glass door. My eyes are dark, shadowed with fatigue and a lingering fear. I look different, changed. It's then that I notice it, a small, scarlet lipstick stain on my shirt, like a bloody reminder of the night. I can't escape the feeling that I'm not alone, that the woman from the mountains is still with me, a phantom presence lurking in the shadows. The fear is a constant companion, a whisper at the edge of consciousness. And then I get a call. It's the dean, the head of the program. He sounds strained, apprehensive. "We need you back. We have a situation. There's a new mission, a new assignment." They'd found a news site, a remote outpost near the Utah border. The landscape, he says, is eerily similar to the one I've become all too familiar with. The air in my chest tightens, a knot forming in my stomach. I know that driving back to that desolate landscape is a bad idea, but I can't shake the feeling that I'm being drawn back, like a moth to a flame. The drive is filled with unease. I'm haunted by memories, each mile of the highway a reminder of the woman from the mountains, her tantalizing allure, and the terror lurking beneath her beauty. We arrive at the outpost, a cluster of buildings huddled against the harsh landscape. It's a world of endless stretches of barren earth and sky, a place that feels strangely familiar, yet eerily different. This time, my mission is not to drive a truck, but to guard the perimeter, to watch for any signs of danger. I'm assigned a watchtower, a high platform overlooking the desolate landscape. The sun sets, casting long shadows across the land. I feel a prickling sensation on my skin, a sense of unease I can't explain. I pull out my rifle, a cold metal comfort in my hands. Night falls, and the wind whispers through the dry grasses, carrying with it a faint scent of jasmine and musk. I strain my ears, listening for any sounds, any signs of life. The moon hangs low in the sky, casting an eerie glow on the barren landscape. Suddenly, a movement catches my eye. A figure, dark and indistinct, emerges from the shadows. The figure is tall and slender, with long, flowing hair, and it moves with an unnerving grace. I raise my rifle, my finger tightening on the trigger. The figure is getting closer, and I can make out its features now, a woman's face, pale and beautiful, with eyes that glow an unnatural green. It's her, the woman from the mountains. Her lips are painted a bright scarlet, a disturbing contrast to her pallid skin. Her smile is wide and predatory, revealing sharp, pointed teeth. "You're back," she says, her voice a silky whisper, laced with a chilling malice. "And this time, you won't be able to escape me." I fire, but the bullet seems to pass through her, leaving no mark. She laughs, a chilling sound that echoes through the night. "You're powerless," she says, her voice laced with a cruel pleasure. "You're mine." The figure leaps towards me, its movements fluid and deadly. I back away, my heart pounding in my chest. The tower is too high, too narrow, to escape. She's upon me now, her touch cold and sharp. I feel a sharp pain in my chest, a searing sensation that burns like fire. I fall back, my vision dimming. Then, I'm in the darkness, a cold, suffocating darkness that wraps around me like a shroud. I'm falling into a void where there is no light, no sound, no hope. I wake in a hospital bed, my roommate and dean present. They tell me that I collapsed on watch, that I fired a shot but hit nothing. My body shows no signs of any wounds. They tell me I'm lucky. But I know different. I know that I was the victim of something dark, something primal, something powerful. The ordeal has left me shaken, and I dread my next assignment, knowing it will involve more of the same desolate, eerie landscape. The woman is still out there, I know it. She's waiting, her presence a constant, chilling reminder that the night is never truly over. As I leave the hospital, I gaze at the endless expanse of the western sky. The sun sets, painting the clouds in hues of orange and purple, a reminder of the night in the mountains, the night of my seduction and my escape. But as I look closer, I can see a figure in the distance, a dark silhouette against the fading light. She's watching me, her eyes gleaming with a predatory hunger. I've been warned, but I know I can't escape. The pull is too strong, the darkness too seductive. I'm already lost in her world, a world of endless nights and a woman who knows how to play my deepest fears. And I'm afraid, truly afraid, for the first time in my life. Last year, I ventured to Moonlit Isle, a secluded, mist-shrouded island known for its unsettling history. The island's centerpiece is the old Crestwood Manor, a once grand estate now reduced to a decaying shadow of its former self. The manor is notorious for its dark past and whispered tales of hauntings, which piqued my curiosity as an archaeologist. My mentor, Professor Alistair Blackwood, had disappeared while researching the manor's sinister reputation, his sudden vanishing leaving an unsettling void in my life. Driven by a mix of grief and a desperate need for answers, I decided to follow in his footsteps, venturing to the isle, seeking both the truth behind his disappearance and the secrets the manor held. The journey to Moonlit Isle was a haunting experience. The ferry, a creaky, rusty vessel, groaned its way through an inky black sea, the waves crashing against its side like the tormented whispers of the dead. The air hung heavy with salt and a cloying, sweet scent I couldn't identify. As we approached the island, a thick fog rolled in, shrouding everything in an eerie white blanket, and a feeling of unease settled in my gut. The island itself felt oppressive, as if the very air held its breath, watching me, waiting. The path leading to Crestwood Manor was overgrown with gnarled trees, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching out, their leaves whispering secrets in the wind. The manor itself was a majestic ruin, its grandeur now haunted by decay. Broken windows stared like empty sockets, and ivy, like clinging tendrils, wrapped around the crumbling stone. The closer I got, the more I felt the weight of the manor's history pressing down on me. It was as if the ghosts of its past were reaching out, their cold hands tugging at my soul. Stepping inside the manor was like entering a tomb. The air was thick with the scent of dust and decay, and the silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional creak of the old floorboards. A chill, almost supernatural, filled the air, sending a shiver down my spine. I found myself surrounded by remnants of a life lived long ago, but the air felt heavy with the unseen presence of something else, something dark and ominous. The manor's labyrinthine halls, choked with debris and cobwebs, seemed to whisper of forgotten tragedies. I found myself drawn deeper into its embrace, the need to uncover the truth driving me forward, the dread clinging to me like damp moss. It wasn't long before I encountered a figure, a man, standing in the shadows, his silhouette a stark contrast against the dim light filtering through the broken windows. He was tall and lean, his face obscured in the darkness, and his presence radiated a strange mixture of allure and menace. As my eyes adjusted to the gloom, I saw him more clearly. He had dark, brooding eyes that seemed to see right through me, and his lips, a thin line against his pale skin, twitched in a smile that was both seductive and unsettling. He introduced himself as Ethan, the manor's sole inhabitant. The way he spoke, a drawl that seemed both languid and intensely passionate, sent a shiver through me. Ethan, the artist, as he claimed, was a man of contrasts. He was both a recluse, hiding away in the decaying manor, and a captivating speaker, his words weaving a tapestry of darkness and desire. Our initial conversations were laced with a charged tension, the manor's eerie ambience only heightening our growing attraction. He spoke of the manor's history, of the family tragedies that had unfolded within its walls, of the spirits that now haunted its corridors. He told me stories of the Crestwood family, their wealth and power, their secrets and scandals. The stories he told were fueled by the shadows, each word building a sense of suspense, and the manor seemed to writhe around us, a canvas for his morbid art. His words, dark and seductive, painted vivid pictures in my mind, blurring the line between reality and the shadows he described. He spoke of a strange energy within the manor, a force that both repelled and attracted him, that filled him with an insatiable hunger. He said the manor had chosen him, made him its own, and he had become its unwilling muse. Ethan was drawn to the dark beauty of the manor, he said, finding inspiration in its decay and mystery. But there was an underlying sadness in his voice, a hint of desperation, that made me question the nature of his connection with the manor. As I explored the manor, drawn deeper into its labyrinthine depths, I stumbled upon hidden chambers and ancient artifacts. Each discovery unveiled a new layer of the manor's history, intertwining pleasure and fear in a strange and intoxicating dance. The history of the manor was woven into the very fabric of its architecture, and the artifacts, each holding a hint of the past, its stories whispering through the dust and decay. There was a sense of foreboding in the air, a palpable atmosphere that seemed to warp reality, and I felt a thrilling fear prickle on the back of my neck. The hidden chambers, with their faded tapestries and dusty portraits, seemed to hold their breath, as if the manor itself was watching us. The artifacts, unearthed from the depths of the manor, held ancient power, their cold, metallic surfaces radiating a strange energy that left me breathless. Ethan and I were drawn into a dangerous game, one where the lines between sensuality and horror blurred. The manor's oppressive atmosphere seemed to heighten our experiences, leading to unsettling revelations and a confrontation with a malevolent force that lurked in the shadows. Our encounters became increasingly intense, charged with a mix of forbidden desire and dread. The manor, a stage for our desires, became a playground where our fantasies and fears intertwined, creating a whirlwind of intoxicating sensations. One night, as a storm raged outside, its fury mirroring the tempest in our hearts, we found ourselves in the manor's grand ballroom. It was a room filled with echoes of a grand past, now shrouded in darkness and the scent of decay. The moon, a pale disk in the storm-racked sky, cast a spectral glow over the room, illuminating Ethan's face. His eyes, pools of dark fire, were fixed on me, his gaze a relentless magnetic force. I was drawn to him, my body responding to the raw heat he radiated, the longing in his eyes. He was a captivating enigma, a combination of light and darkness that both thrilled and terrified me. He spoke of the manor's history, weaving stories of passion and betrayal, of love and death, his voice a hypnotic caress. As he spoke, I felt a thrill course through me, a dangerous mix of fear and desire. The ballroom, with its faded grandeur and haunting silence, became our theater, the stage for our desires. Our hands, trembling with a mixture of fear and anticipation, met, touching lightly, then with growing intensity. The manor seemed to pulse with an energy, an ancient force, that was both thrilling and terrifying. Our intimacy, fueled by the manor's dark energy, became a whirlwind of sensations. He was a master of darkness, his touch both electric and chilling, and I found myself surrendering to his intoxicating allure. The night was a blur of passionate encounters, fueled by desire and dread, a tempestuous dance with a shadow that haunted my dreams. The manor, a witness to our tangled desires, seemed to revel in the chaos we unleashed. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of disorientation, the events of the night a hazy dream. The manor, still shrouded in mist, seemed to hold its breath, watching us, waiting. I felt a strange mix of emotions, a sense of wonder mixed with a creeping fear. The line between pleasure and horror was blurred, and I found myself questioning where the allure ended and the terror began. As I delved deeper into the manor's secrets, I uncovered a truth that chilled me to the bone. Ethan, the artist, the recluse, was more than just a man obsessed with the manor's darkness. He was a conduit, a link to a malevolent force that had taken root within the manor's decaying walls. He was a vessel of this ancient entity, and the manor, its spirit intertwined with his, had become a breeding ground for something sinister. The truth unfolded like a nightmare, a twisted tapestry woven from secrets and lies. The manor's history, its whispers and shadows, had awakened something dark and ancient. Ethan, consumed by its power, had become its servant, his art a conduit for its malevolent influence. The island's dark secrets threatened to consume us, a vortex of desire and horror, and I found myself trapped in a dangerous game, navigating the slippery slope between passion and madness. The manor, a crucible of our desires, became a battlefield for our souls, where our deepest fears and desires intertwined. The climax came on a night when the moon hung low in the sky, its spectral light casting long, distorted shadows. Ethan, his eyes burning with an unnatural intensity, stood before me, his form radiating an unholy energy. He spoke of the manor's power, of its ability to shape reality, to bend the boundaries of life and death. He spoke of the ancient entity that had taken root within its walls, its growing power threatening to consume everything. The manor, pulsating with a malevolent energy, seemed to writhe around us, its very walls closing in, as if to suffocate us in its embrace. I felt fear, a primal terror that gripped my heart, yet I also felt a strange sense of exhilaration, as if the line between life and death was blurring. The confrontation was a whirlwind, a clash of desires and fears, a struggle against a malevolent force that threatened to consume our souls. As I fought to escape the manor's clutches, the island seemed to thrum with an ancient energy, whispering secrets of forgotten horrors. The manor, a cage of our desires, became our prison, as the entity, growing in power, threatened to claim us both. The battle was a blur, a whirlwind of raw emotions and primal instincts. We were both consumed by the darkness, our bodies entwined in a dance of lust and terror. As the entity's power surged, it threatened to dominate our wills, leaving us at its mercy. The nightmare ended with a scream, a cry of anguish that echoed through the manor's halls, a desperate plea for salvation. The manor, consumed by the darkness, seemed to crumble around us, its walls collapsing, its secrets buried in a tomb of dust and decay. In the aftermath, I found myself alone, staring out at the mist-shrouded island, the manor's remnants a haunting reminder of what I had faced. The experience, a whirlwind of pleasure and terror, had left me scarred, changed. The allure of the manor, its seductive darkness, had cost me dearly, and the island's secrets, forever etched in my memory, would haunt me for eternity. I left Moonlit Isle, the island of shadows, with a heart heavy with grief, forever haunted by the ghosts of a love that had been consumed by darkness. Growing up, I was always a skeptic about the supernatural. My parents, both staunchly logical scientists, had instilled in me a reverence for reason and a healthy dose of skepticism. Ghosts, demons, and all manner of spectral beings were relegated to the realm of campfire stories and cheap horror movies. Despite this, I always felt a certain fascination with the unknown. Maybe it was the thrill of the chase, the allure of the impossible, or perhaps a subconscious yearning for something more than the mundane. Whatever it was, I found myself drawn to places whispered to be haunted. I visited graveyards, abandoned asylums, and forgotten mansions, each time hoping for a glimpse of the spectral, a shiver of the ethereal. But each trip ended in the same way, disappointment. Then came that fateful night in Charleston. It was a humid summer evening, the air thick with the scent of blooming magnolias and the buzz of cicadas. I was strolling through the city's historic cemetery, the weathered headstones casting long shadows under the waning sun. The air felt heavy with history, with the weight of lives lived and lost. As I walked past a particularly ornate mausoleum, a voice whispered directly into my ear. Clear as day, it spoke the chilling words, "All alone." The sensation was electrifying. It wasn't a sound I heard, but a feeling, a whisper in my mind, a cold shiver that coursed through me. The adrenaline rush was unlike anything I had ever felt. It was a primal fear that shook me to my core. From that moment, I was no longer a skeptic. The experience in Charleston awakened something in me, a thirst for the unknown, a desire to understand the mysteries that lay beyond the veil of rationality. I immersed myself in paranormal investigations, devouring books, attending lectures, and scouring the internet for any information I could find. It wasn't long before I joined a local paranormal investigation group, a ragtag bunch of enthusiasts who shared my fascination with the supernatural. They were a mixed bag, a retired detective with a penchant for EVP recordings, a college student with a knack for dowsing, and a young woman named Emma, who possessed a quiet intensity that drew me to her. The group's first investigation was at an old, decrepit mansion in the West Virginia wilderness. The mansion, once a grand estate, now stood a skeletal testament to the past, its crumbling facade overgrown with ivy and creeping vines. Its windows, once bright with light, were now vacant, dark eyes staring out into the surrounding woods. As I stepped inside, I was struck by the stillness, the oppressive silence that seemed to cling to the air. It felt like a tomb, a place where time had stopped, and the echoes of the past lingered. Emma, with her shoulder-length blonde hair, sparkling green eyes, and a captivating presence that was impossible to ignore, was right by my side. She was dressed in tight jeans and a casual top that accentuated her slender figure. I found myself drawn to her, to the way she moved with a graceful confidence, her smile a beacon in the gloom. We spent the next few hours setting up our equipment, placing motion detectors, temperature probes, and EVP recorders throughout the mansion. As we worked, the air grew colder, the silence growing more oppressive. The mansion seemed to press against us, its unseen inhabitants watching our every move. Later that night, as we conducted an EVP session in the mansion's grand ballroom, the energy shifted from thrilling to unsettling. The room felt heavy, the air thick with an almost palpable presence. Emma's enthusiasm seemed to border on the otherworldly, her excitement palpable. "I feel something here," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the static. "It's intense." I felt it too, a cold shiver down my spine, a prickling on my skin. As Emma spoke, the EVP recorder crackled to life, capturing a low, guttural moan that sent a chill through me. "It's responding," Emma said, her eyes wide with excitement. "It's communicating with us." We continued the EVP session for another hour, recording a series of strange noises, whispers, groans, and the sound of heavy footsteps. But as the night wore on, the atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive. The mansion seemed to close in on us, the darkness pressing against our senses. The air grew heavy, and my senses became overloaded. "I think we should call it a night," I said, my voice trembling, feeling a growing dread I couldn't ignore. Emma looked at me, her green eyes wide with concern, but she didn't argue. As we packed up our equipment, I felt a cold, unnatural hand touch the back of my neck, the cold seeping into my bones, its presence a chilling reminder of the unseen forces at work in this house. Later, as we settled into our tent for the night, I found myself unable to shake the feeling of dread. The mansion loomed in the distance, a silent sentinel against the moonless night. The air was thick with the scent of decaying wood and the dampness of the forest floor. I tossed and turned, unable to sleep, my mind racing with images of the EVP recordings, the cold touch, and the unnerving stillness of the mansion. My dreams turned nightmarish, filled with disturbing visions of Emma in intimate, supernatural scenarios. It was as if she was pulled into a world beyond my comprehension, a world where the lines between reality and nightmare blurred. The air grew cold, and the sound of footsteps approaching the tent, slow and deliberate, shattered the silence. My heart pounded in my chest, a frantic drum against my ribs. Terror gripped me, a vice around my throat. I couldn't breathe, my body paralyzed with fear. The zipper of the tent slowly slid open, revealing an abyss of inky blackness and two glowing red eyes staring back at me. I felt the cold seep into my bones, the air thick with a presence that felt both alluring and terrifying. "Emma?" I whispered, my voice trembling, a prayer for the familiar, for the safety of the known. But there was no response, only the chilling silence and the two glowing red eyes that burned into my soul. The figure stepped forward, its form indistinct in the darkness. It felt impossibly close, its presence a suffocating weight that pinned me to the ground. I could feel its breath on my skin, hot and stale, the smell of decay and something else, something ancient and primal. The figure leaned closer, its eyes gleaming in the darkness. I could feel its gaze consuming me, stripping away my defenses, leaving me raw and vulnerable. "You're not alone anymore," it whispered, its voice a low, seductive murmur. I struggled to break free, my fear turning into a desperate need to escape, to flee this terrifying encounter. But my body remained frozen, my will shattered by the sheer terror of the moment. Then I felt it, a shift, a change in the atmosphere, a wave of energy that pulsed through the tent. The air grew cold, the smell of decay replaced by the sweet scent of magnolias. I glanced towards Emma's sleeping bag, a faint glow emanating from within. As I watched, the glow intensified, and a form emerged. It was Emma, her eyes blazing with an unnatural light. Her face, once beautiful and innocent, was now contorted, her lips twisted into a cruel smile. She stepped closer, her eyes locked on mine, an icy touch of desire mixed with malice. "I'm not the only one who wants you," she whispered, her voice laced with a dark, seductive edge. I felt the blood drain from my face, my heart pounding in my chest. My terror had transformed into something else, a primal fear that mingled with a strange, unsettling fascination. In her eyes I saw a darkness that mirrored my own, a darkness that had been awakened by the events of the night. I knew then that something had changed, that I was no longer the skeptic I once was. The lines between reality and nightmare had blurred, and I had been pulled into a world I could never have imagined. But even as terror gripped me, I felt a strange sense of exhilaration, an attraction to the dark energy that pulsed around Emma, a fascination with the supernatural power that had taken hold of her. As Emma stepped closer, her dark eyes burning into mine, I knew that this was only the beginning. The night was far from over, and the darkness held many more secrets waiting to be revealed.